Hello my small fat adaptive family, and welcome back to another list on my guide to ketosis. This was one I wasn't looking forward to. I'm gonna explain to you what the phrase "if it fits your macros" means. It's something I don't agree with, but it's quite common with ketoers. If it fits your macros is basically a way of saying you can eat whatever you want so long as your daily macros are still acceptable. So it's basically saying if I wanted a quarter of a Mars bar and it fit into my macros in ketosis, I'll eat it. I firmly believe that when following a ketogenic diet, you should follow it. For me, there is a reason why the food group of flour and grains is called carbohydrates, because they're full of more carbohydrates than any other nutrients. I am following a low carb, high fat diet. I want to have low carbs. I was taught 4 years ago that the best way to get into and stay in ketosis was to avoid obvious carbs, and that's what I do, and that's what I promote. This isn't me throwing shade at absolutely anyone. It's just my opinion, and it may make this list turn into an argument, especially for the people that follow the whole "if it fits your macros" saying. But as I said, this is my opinion as someone who's been in deep ketosis for 4 years now. And if you don't agree with my list, that's okay. This just isn't the list for you. I suggest you go and find another list. That's the important point out of the way. Here's another quick side note. While some of the flours on this list are higher carb than others, the ones with higher might be better rated on the list. There is a reason for this. An example is coconut flour actually has more carbs than oats per 100 grams, but I would take and suggest coconut flour any day over oats. Partly because, as I said before, I avoid obvious carbs, but partly because it is so unlikely for you to sit down and in one sitting eat a whole serving of 100 grams of coconut flour just on its own. Whereas with oats, that's much more likely and much more doable. With that being said, it'll go like this. Green is you can eat pretty liberally. Orange is check your portions, check carbs. Red being shouldn't eat it or have it on very special occasions. Everything is net carbs, and the net carbs are for 100 grams or 3.5 ounces of said grain or flour. My green list has shirataki noodles, which are 1 gram, lupin flour, which is 3 grams, cricket flour, which is about 6.8 grams, flaxseed meal, which is about 7.7 grams, psyllium husk, which is 8.3, and whilst that is incredibly high to be on my green list, you use like a tablespoon or so at a time, so because it's so filling. It's nothing to worry about because you're having such little quantity. Almond flour, almond meal, which is 10 grams. My orange list is yeast, which is 14 grams. Whilst it's something you could have in moderation, it's not something I'd recommend, because as your body changes and you get into full ketosis, your body starts to react digestion-wise to certain things, and you could have some proper stomach problems having yeast. Peanut flour, which is 15 grams, and coconut flour, which is 18 grams. Then I've got xanthan gum, which is 77 grams. Now listen, that is so insanely high. That is higher than all-purpose flour, and it's on my orange list. However, I cannot think of a keto recipe that I've ever done or ever seen where you're using more than about 10 grams, and even then it's portioned out into servings. And the same goes for arrowroot starch. Arrowroot starch comes out to 84 grams. This is one that people like to have a go at me about and argue with me about. I get a lot of flack for using arrowroot, but I use arrowroot in such small amounts. The most I've ever used is 20 grams split between 12 servings, which came out to 1.4 grams per serving. But that's not even the reason I use arrowroot. The reason I use arrowroot, despite it being higher than all-purpose flour, is because when I'm recreating a starchy food, I want to recreate it as close as possible as I can without getting dangerously out of ketosis. Whether that's the starchy taste or the starchy texture, I wanted to recreate it. And I'm not going to use corn flour because that comes from corn, which for me is an obvious carb, whereas arrowroot starch comes from tropical plants, and I know full well it doesn't affect my digestion like corn flour would. Now on my red list, I've got oats at 12 grams, I've got amaranth flour at 16 grams, I've got oat groat at 18 grams, rice, which is between 20 and 25 grams, and this depends how it's cooked and what it's cooked with. Now I know rice is technically a seed or a grass. It's used usually like a grain, and that's why it's on this list. Pasta is between 16 and 28 grams without any sauces. Soy flour is about 30 grams. A plain waffle is about 33 grams. Whole wheat bread is 36 grams. Oat flour is 44 grams. A white bagel is 45 grams. Cornbread is 52 grams. Barley is 56 grams. Barley flour, buckwheat flour, and spelt all become between 57 grams and 60 grams. Rye, corn kernels, or popcorn, and whole wheat flour comes to 61 grams. Wheat comes out to about 62 grams. Millet, 64 grams. Breadcrumbs, about 68 grams. Semolina or semolina flour, 69 grams. Rice flour, white or brown, comes between 70 and 78 grams. Durum and buckwheat is 71 grams. All-purpose flour is 73 grams. Potato flour or potato starch is 77 grams. Lucky Charms are 74 grams. Corn Flakes are 81 grams. Rice Krispies are 85 grams. And corn flour or corn starch is 95 grams. As you can see, I've thrown in a few sort of standard grainy, floury items such as cereals or breads, just to show you how bad these foods are for you on a standard Western diet. And as you heard, I don't know if you acknowledged, Lucky Charms has less carbs, which means less sugar, than cornflakes. Realistically, if you want to give your kids less sugar, you want to give them Lucky Charms over cornflakes. And that says a lot about a high carbohydrate diet. Pick your food wisely. Leave a like if you found it interesting, if you found it insightful, helpful, anything like that. Subscribe if you're inclined. Show me some love, drop a comment. That's all from me this time. Keep calm, keto on. I'll see you next time.